Now, on this special presentation of I'm Listening, with Veterans Day just in the rearview mirror, we chat with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention about prioritizing mental health for those who serve or have served. Here's Dave Glover.
Welcome, everyone. You are listening to Audacy, to I'm Listening. My name is Dave Glover. I'm going to be your host. I do the Dave Glover Show in St. Louis on KMOX. Been doing it for 25 years. And we're going to be talking about Veterans Affairs and especially suicide prevention tonight. Something that's very near and dear to my heart because in 2002, on Christmas Eve, I lost my brother Keith to suicide, who had served in the U.S. Army in the early 70s. So since then, and especially since I never served a day myself, it's been very important to me to do what I can to help out veterans, especially those who are having suicidal ideations. My guest today is Kevin Hertell. He's a former aircraft maintainer in the Air Force. He's lost multiple airmen through his time in service, which led him to create Veteran Suicide Awareness and Remembrance Flag Corporation, also known as S.A.R. Flag Family. Kevin, so nice to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me, and condolences on your loss.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And it's something that, I mean, we're going back now over 20 years, but it's something that at the time, I wasn't that involved with veteran affairs. Like I said, I never served. I didn't know about the problem with suicides until my brother. And then once I looked into it, there was just so much information there. It was overwhelming. So let's start out. If you could just tell us a little bit about your time with the Air Force and situations that maybe led you to where you are today.
I was an F-16 crew chief, which means I was a maintainer, jet mechanic, basically. I served during 9/11. I got out and I struggled acclimating back to being a civilian. And then in 2016, my cousin, Senior Airman Robert Dean, U.S. Air Force, he died by suicide. It was at that time I became painfully aware of the 22 a day, and I didn't know about that previously. And I kind of felt embarrassed and ashamed that I didn't know about it. But like I said, I was struggling myself. And so I then spent 2 years reading and researching everything I could get my hands on, trying to understand why this was happening to our brothers and sisters and what, if anything, I could do about it. And in that time, I lost another cousin to suicide, Clay Free. He was a civilian, but he died almost a year later. And what a lot of people don't know or may not know is that when somebody dies in your family by suicide, the immediate family members, if they're struggling, they can also die by suicide. And that's what happened to Clay. But I kept coming back to the stigma that exists within our community, our warrior culture. And that's why I wanted to create a symbol. I decided on creating a symbol, in which later became the S.A.R. flag. But that led to our mission, which is to break the stigma of mental health, suicide, and seeking treatment within our warrior culture to facilitate suicide prevention for our veterans and military.
Kevin,
so that's how I kind of got to that.
One thing that I've learned over the past couple of decades being involved in this is it's intuitive to think that, sure, if you see heavy combat, it's going to affect you in such a way to lead to PTSD, which could lead to suicidal ideations, which could lead to taking your own life. But it's not just war fighters. It's not just combat people. And that's something I've learned over the years. And that's a very important point.
Yeah, I mean, we did one of the primary ways in which my organization breaks the stigma is via our remembrance ceremonies. And we present an S.A.R. flag to the surviving family members of those who've lost a loved one to suicide. That's a whole nother thing. But the reason why I mentioned that is we did a remembrance ceremony for a cadet who was in the Air Force. And he was still going through training. And it can affect you. A lot of people who come in might have pre-existing health conditions that can be exacerbated by military service. And I think during COVID, a lot of people now understand, after having the lockdowns, just being isolated affects your mental health detrimentally in such a way that could lead to a crisis, and without intervention can lead to death. So it affects everyone. You don't have to be a combat veteran. Just being in the military, it can exacerbate pre-existing conditions or create conditions that could lead to a crisis, which could then lead to death without intervention.
So, Kevin, let's talk a bit about some of the contributing factors to veteran suicide and some of the protective factors. What are some of the things, if you can go drill down a little deeper, about service across the board that connects a direct line to someone having suicidal ideations at a later time?
From my experience, our training. I mean, we're trained from day one. We have some of the best training in the world. We have in the Air Force, it was called self-aid buddy care, where if your arm is blown off, I know how to tourniquet and stop the bleeding. And I know how to, a sucking chest wound, I know how to put a credit card there and tape 3 sides so the air can go out, but it can't get in. You won't drown in your own blood. I know all these medical things, but when it came to mental health, they trained us to downplay it, dismiss it, diminish it, or just push through. I mean, we had patches that said embrace the suck. And so the mentality in our warrior culture is just to push through it. And so that the reason for suicide varies as much as the individual. But the two things that I kept coming back to in my experience, and I've seen across the board, is isolation and hopelessness. And I think that mentality in our warrior culture to just push through it does not serve us well. And that's one area or aspect of our training that's not, it's leading to people's death. And I think when I talk to the military and especially leadership, I always try and get them to focus on mental health as physical health. A mentally healthy warrior is a mission-ready warrior, and this is something that we should pay more attention to. And that's also the stigma that's surrounding it. If we focus on breaking that stigma and allowing people to simply talk about it and utilizing the services that are available, it can equal saving lives.
So, Kevin, an analogy here, like my company I work for has rules for the whole company and edicts. And then I have my buddies who I'm in the trenches with every day doing the show. And we have our own little rules and our own conversations. In your experience, is it like that in the military, that the military may say, downplay it, embrace the suck? But between the guys, between the soldiers, between the airmen and the Marines, are there more candid conversations while deployed about mental health?
Well, if you talk to your leadership up front, they'll say, hey, talk about it. And, when they're under the spotlight, we support mental health. But then when you're actually in theater or you're in operational service, even from my own experience, you get a briefing, which is like a suicide briefing or a suicide prevention briefing, which kind of checks the box for them and lets them move on to, getting back to work. And they tell you, if a clinician comes in, don't tell them you're drinking, don't tell them you're suicidal, don't tell them you're depressed, just get back to work, shut the heck up and get back to work, which is a nice way of saying it. But peer-to-peer support is the greatest. And that's in the military, you have that. And we do talk about the tough things with each other because we're brothers and sisters and we're like family. And when you're serving, you might join to serve the country, but when you're serving to the for the person next to you, in front of you, and behind you. And that's one of the things that really hurts veterans, is because we don't have that anymore. And you just go from having this community and this purpose and people you can talk to candidly to just nothing. And the transition period is really rough. And I was talking to an Army, active duty Army the other day, because we partner with active duty whenever we can. I said, look, brother, he said he's getting out soon. I said, look, brother, just so you know, there's a community out there for you, but you got to go find it. It's not going to come to you. And once you do find it, it'll be there for life. And so I think what we have in the military, we need to focus on creating community when we get out so we can have those candid conversations. Because like I said, peer-to-peer is the best. If
you're just tuning in, you're listening to I'm Listening. We're talking about veteran affairs and specifically veteran suicide. My name is Dave Glover. I'm the host. And my friend Kevin Hertell here is a former aircraft maintainer. And we're talking about his time in the service and afterwards. Want to acknowledge American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and Talk Saves Lives, supporting our veterans. Talk Saves Lives, supporting our veterans is a 1-hour presentation available in person or virtually, designed to help audiences learn about the impact of suicide among veterans, along with practical ways to recognize warning signs for suicide, navigate tough conversations, and connect veterans to support in ways that respect their autonomy. Speaking of that, Kevin, from your personal experience, what are some of the warning signs that you have seen in your brothers and sisters or heard about, so that people who are listening, whose family members may be going through this, may know what to look for?
That's a tough answer. And I think definitely, if anybody wants to know how to get up to speed, how to serve our community better, definitely try and find an AFSP local to you and get the Talk Saves Lives, supporting our veterans experience, because that will help you not only let you know resources, but to identify ideations and more. But some of the things from my experience, you never know. It's the people who are the happiest. You got to check on them too. They might be putting a front up or, a good face on. If they seem like they're doing great, especially if they've been doing poorly or they have a stretch of where they seem depressed and then all of a sudden they're really happy and they feel like everything's going great, check in on them, because they might be feeling happy because they have plans to take their life. And so that gives them some kind of freedom from the pain that they're feeling. But it's rough. Giving things away is one of the ways you can tell if people are just really disconnected, or if they're actually talking about it. If they say, it doesn't matter if I'm here anymore, or I feel like a burden. There's really a lot of ways, but I highly suggest the Talk Saves Lives and checking that out. I actually feel very proud and honored to be a part of that program. We have been working with national. I'm a board member of the Long Island chapter for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And I've been working with AFSP since April on this Talk Saves Lives. And I got to tell you, the first time I gave it to a group so we could get feedback to help, its pilot to help launch, It's spot on, man. It really affected me and I got emotional. There was a couple of times where I had to stop because I related to the material so much. And so I really am thankful to be a part of this and having the opportunity to serve our community, because at the end of the day, it means saving the lives of our brothers and sisters. And that's who I care about.
Yeah, it's so true, Kev. What you're saying about things that triggered you during the presentation, not that you did anything wrong, but that just happened to me while you were speaking. We had put 2 and 2 together, but my brother took his life on Christmas Eve, 2002, and he was estranged from the family. And I had spoken to him, a little bit over the months leading up to it. And he was very depressed and he was very down and took his own life. Later, a couple of weeks later, we found a girlfriend. He was living in Tucson, Arizona, and she told us all about it. And she said, well, the weirdest thing is that Keith was so depressed and such a dark figure. And then about a week before he did it, I've never seen a happier guy. And he was light and he was effusive. And I just put 2 and 2 together that he had made that decision. So what you're talking about theoretically happened in my life in reality. So that's something that people really need to be keen to.
Yeah, that's tough to deal with. And I'm really sorry that your family had that lost. And I'm sorry that happened to your brother. And, I've been there myself. And a lot of times we look for a lifeline and we look for a reason. And if we don't find that, and it's just, I want people to understand that when people are having these ideations, they're not in their right state of mind and all they feel is pain. And they're just looking for a release of this pain. And if we can get to them in that moment or before they get to that moment, and just remind them that there's community, that there's resources. And if we can help them get through it, it's just rough. Every day we lose 20 plus of our brothers and sisters. And that's why I've dedicated my life to suicide, because I don't want any families like yours or like mine to get that news that they lost a loved one to suicide. It's just tough. But I think it's the thing that gives me hope is that it can be preventable. And when we have talk shows like this, or when we get together and talk like this, we're moving it from the darkness and into the light and making it okay to talk about and have people understand that it's okay not to be okay. You don't have to stay there. We can get through this together. And I really hope we can underscore that for anyone who's struggling. I hope this reaches someone, and I think it will. It always does. I believe that it's going to reach someone who might be struggling. And just hearing this could be the reason, see our brothers and sisters coming together, because we're not alone. We all struggle, but we can get through it. I've gotten through it. I got the tools I needed to not only survive, but to thrive and get back to being who I am. And that's why I want to share this story as much as I can, because this isn't something unique to me. This is a struggle that others have gone through, that I've seen my brothers and sisters get through, which provided hope, because if they can get through it, that means I can get through it. And if I can get through it, you can get through it. We can get through it together and be better on the other side.
Kevin, just a couple minutes left here in our program. Let's talk about one final thing. For anyone out there who is in this place and you have had suicidal ideations, I have been there. I have dealt with my own mental struggles, and I find that talking about it openly on the air in front of thousands of people has helped me. But as a survivor of my brother's suicide, and you have survived several, let's take a minute and talk about the impact it has on survivors, because it's not a natural death and it doesn't leave a natural wound.
No. Well, for me, when my first cousin died, it was just like, you get all the questions, why did this happen? And you get mad. I was mad at it, why would you do this? And I didn't understand it at first. And it was just something that never leaves you. It was like a splinter in my mind. But along my journey, when I found out that it can be prevented, it just turned all that, what felt like infinite sadness to me, into hope. And hope inspires action, and action gives us the reason for hope. And so, I just would like to focus on building community and letting our brothers and sisters know, and even the civilian population know as well, that this is something that you can get through. And for me, myself, if I would have succumbed to what I call my demons, there is so much I would have missed out on. I have a beautiful family now. I have a son. I have a wife. I never thought I could find anyone that would put up with me, and I have a beautiful wife. I have a daughter. I have a family. These are things I have a very humble background, which is just to say, we were poor and not in the greatest neighborhood. But if you just stick around, you never know where your life is going to go, and you don't know who you can impact along the way. And that's really helped me along the way, is staying busy with volunteering for the AFSP, for S.A.R, the organization I run, and just volunteering in general. There are many organizations for our veterans and military that you can find in your local communities. And one of the things that I didn't know that I experienced, and I almost felt selfish in the beginning, when you help others, when you lift others, you actually lift yourself up. And it's a great feeling. And it just helps strengthen my resolve to continue on this mission.
For anyone out there who is struggling mentally, whether you served or you did not, there are resources. People care. Reach out to a friend. Reach out to clergy. Go to afsp.org. If you are a veteran, avail yourselves of Talk Saves Lives, supporting our veterans. Kevin, it was a privilege and a pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for your service, and thank you for today.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to serve. I appreciate it.
Find out more about Audacy's commitment to mental health awareness at imlistening.org. If you or someone you know is in crisis and in need of mental health services, call or text 988 and find more resources from our partners at afsp.org.